Essentially what we were able to see from the engine being changed to fresh oil to the engine being run, there was about a 40% difference in the amount of fuel in the oil.
I've got a little experiment set up here. What has happened here is we've got a 2019 F350. It came in with a contaminated fuel system, the CP4 pump. I'll take this apart. We've got metal and debris in the fuel. So we replaced all the injectors. We updated the pump, put new rails in, new lines like you're supposed to, return lines, new filters in the tank, and flushed the tank. We're all clean. Our first test is, after we got this all done, and the reason I wanted to do this on a brand new fuel system, I can't give you a better, like where a fuel system isn't contaminated. I know it's got brand new parts on it. I'm trying to be as thorough and accurate as I possibly can. So with installing a completely new fuel system on this 2019 F350, my first experiment is I've changed the oil. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take 10 minutes, 3 times, and we're just gonna start it up and let it idle. Then we're gonna let it cool down again. So right now we're gonna go outside, we're gonna see how cold it is. It's Utah, it's not Alaska, and it's not the Arctic Circle or anything like that. I know it gets colder up there, but with that being said, let me understand something. My contention is we're going to find more fuel in the oil from just idling it for 10 or 15 minutes than by driving it. That's the whole point of this. And it's only gonna get worse the colder it gets. So let's go outside and we're gonna do our first 10-minute idle.
5 minutes later.
All right, so here's the truck. It is, let's check it out. We'll give you the outside temperature off the scanner. It's 9:46, January the 15th. It's currently 30 degrees and it says sunny. So this is where we're gonna start it up and just idle it for 10 minutes. We're gonna shut it down, go ahead and get her going.
Okay.
We're gonna hook up the scan tool. We'll kind of, show you where the oil temperature gets up just doing this. Okay, so it's 9:48, January 15th. Ambient temperature is 24 degrees.
Engine oil temperature's 28.
So yeah, the truck's cold. Just to re-explain what I'm doing here. We're gonna shut it down. I'll show you again on the screen. It'll be completely cold when we do this again for the second time. And then we'll do the same thing, cold soak, and we'll do it a third time. Then we're gonna change that oil out and create a sample of that. And then we'll do the drive, which is the one I'm thinking is gonna be so much less fuel in the oil. All right, so here we go. So where's our timer?
It's right here. We have
30 seconds left. And our air temperature is still at 26 degrees. Our oil temperature has come up to 82, not really great. And our coolant temperature is at
that's voltage 39 degrees.
39 degrees. Okay, so that's it. Let's turn it off. Okay, we're gonna let it sit. We're gonna let the engine cool back down, get the oil temperature the same as the outside temperature, and we'll do it again. All right, it's 5:28 at night. It's 27 degrees here in Centerville. The truck's recording here, come on in here. Our ambient temperature on the truck is recording 33, our coolant's 39, and our oil temperature's 39. This will be our second start. We're gonna let it just sit and idle for 10 minutes, and let's get my timer going here. Okay, go ahead, fire it up. Okay.
Timer's going.
Okay, so we got 50 seconds left on the 10 minutes right now. Our ambient air temperature is still 33. Our oil temperature has only come up to 84. Our coolant temperature has come up to 46. Remember, you don't get a lot of heat in your coolant when it's just sitting here idling, guys. You barely get any heat in your oil temp. You're only up to 86 degrees, so you've put 50 degrees in it is all. and we're coming up on 15 seconds here. So we'll turn that off, and then in the morning, we'll do it for the third time, and then we'll drain that oil and save it for testing.
Day 2.
Cool.
It's a frosty morning. Let's see how frosty it is. And this will be our third test, our final one, on the start and idle for 10 minutes. And then we're gonna do an oil sample on that. Time and temp, man. You hooking up the scan tool?
Yep, getting it started right now.
Time and temp, it's 9:55, January the 16th.
The top.
We got coolant temp is 26. Oil temp, of course, is the same, 26. And ambient temperature is 26 degrees. A little chilly out here today, chilly. There we go. All right, we're gonna let this idle for 10 minutes. We'll recheck our stats, and then we'll drain the oil, take a sample of that oil, send it out for analysis, and then we'll do the other test, where instead of idling it for 10 minutes on 3 cold cycles, we'll drive it for 10 minutes on 3 cold cycles. Okay, let me see your phone.
We're at 38 seconds.
Okay, we're coming up here at the end of our 10 minutes. Whoops. 30 seconds left. Our ambient air temp is 28 degrees. Our coolant temp has come up to 39. Woo, nice warm. And our engine oil temperature has come all the way to 80 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and drive this in the shop right now, and we're gonna do that oil change. Oh, the reason we've had this whole discussion with Lake Speed is I want to know the science. I want to know what's the best way to do things. And AG1 has proven to me that this is one of the best things I can do for my gut health. It's got multivitamins, probiotics, and superfoods. Gluten-free, dairy-free. I need that. And you add that combination together, man, it creates horsepower. Without this, I break down, just like your car would, your engine. That's what I try to teach here. How do you keep going? I'm 65 years old. AG1 absolutely helps me do that. I don't drink my energy drinks anymore, which I'm not a big fan of those things, never was. This is working great for me. Either click on the link or scan the QR code and you'll get a $76 value on your first purchase, which will include their vitamin D supplement, and you'll get 5 of these travel packs. And you want the travel packs because it makes it easy. You throw that in your luggage, they don't take up any space, and you're good to go.
Meanwhile.
Oh, come on. There we go.
Our oil sample out of this now, which is 3 cold idles at 10 minutes each. Of course, we'll put another new oil filter on. This truck's getting a heck of an oil change. It's not cheap. This experiment's not cheap.
Pull the drain plug and fill it halfway up, and then put the rest in the drain pan. Let that sit for 6-7 hours, and then do a start 10-minute drive, and then do some more tomorrow.
Day 3.
Okay, you know what we're doing here. It's a cold morning, so we are gonna do our testing now. Okay, we're gonna start our truck up. Our scan tool will show us air temperature, oil temp, all that. But this is the one we're gonna do 3 10-minute drives. So we're gonna warm it up. I'm gonna get on the it's kind of a little neighborhood. We'll drive through that, get on the freeway, get the off ramp, come back. I think that's gonna be right about 10 minutes. Then we'll let it sit and get cold again, and we'll do that 2 more times after that. And then we're gonna sample those 2 different cycles. even the hula girl says it's cold, for crying out loud. It's cold in here. All right, we're gonna get a phone with a timer on it too. You wanna deal with that? Just kind of set the phone right here. There you go. All right, let's fire this bad boy up, get our data. So we got oil temp, coolant temp, ambient air temp. All right, and timer, let's go for a 10-minute drive. Now, I didn't say just throw it in gear, let it idle for, 15, 20 seconds, clear itself a little bit, and go for a drive.
We have 8 minutes left, so we're 2 minutes in. So on our oil temp, we're 35 degrees, 62 on coolant, and 26 still outside. So
see how much quicker our coolant's heating up?
Yeah,
Remember yesterday,
coolant.
10 minutes, we didn't get to 80 degrees on our coolant.
No, I
Just
don't.
sitting there.
3 minutes
3
in.
minutes in?
Yeah.
And what's our oil temp?
Our oil temperature is 57 degrees.
I think our oil temp got to 60 in 10 minutes, didn't it?
Yeah. 60, like 64, 65. Trying to beat the timer.
I'm trying to get 10 minutes back to shop is what I'm trying to do here. Not even 5 minutes.
Yeah, well then 4.5 minutes.
You can see what our temp, our oil temp is 116 degrees. Our coolant temp is 82.
It's actually cooling off.
And our ambient air temp thermostat open. Our ambient temperature is 28 degrees. All right, folks, it looks like boy, I tell you, that's about as close. Look at this. That's as close as you're gonna get it. And here we are. All right, we'll let it park, we'll let it cool off, and then we'll do it again. All right, that's our first 10-minute test drive. We got 2 more to do, but we'll let it cold soak. We'll do the second one the end of the day.
Later.
All right, this will be our test drive number 2. So we have our second 10-minute test drive. We're not gonna idle it, we're gonna get in it and drive it. And remember, I'm not telling you to drive it like you just stole it, you know, just get in there and drive it gently, get some heat in it. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and it is, what morning is it? The 20th, and it's 19 degrees. Woo-wee, cold. Yeah. So after 10 minutes of test drive, our oil temperature's up to 156, and our coolant temp, 57. So we'll turn that off, let it sit, get cold again, drive it one more time for 10 minutes, and then we'll do that oil sample. Be back. I got a great idea when it's so freaking cold you can hardly stand it. Instead of going out and idling your truck for, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes and using all that fuel to, get your cab warm. Yeah, it's cold. Look how nice and warm it is inside the truck. All I did, plugged in a little heater. Now, of course, let's be safe about it. All these heaters come with fail-safes, so if they fall over, you're not gonna burn your truck down. Just put a little heater in it. And then your cab, the windshield's all cleaned off, defrosted, you can start it up. And the best part, you're not wasting fuel, clogging up your DPF, your EGR, and idling the truck with low oil pressure. Everybody's saying to me too, they're like, hey, I got a high idle. Well, of course you got a high idle. That's what the engine's trying to do. It's trying to get more heat into it, more combustion cycle. So if it's up at 12 or 1500 RPM, just drive it. But now you got a warm cab. Just a little quick tip. Okay, we got 17 degrees on the coolant temp. Our oil temp is 15 degrees. I'm telling you, it's a cold morning, but that space heater in here sure made it nice and toasty, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, let's go for a drive. Hit that thing. It's 10 o'clock, 21st of January, our third and final driving test. And let's go, 10 minutes.
Much later.
All right, that's a 10-minute test drive. And our oil temperature is 140 degrees, right there. And our coolant temp, 86 degrees. That's our third test drive. We'll do an oil sample on that oil, and then we'll compare the two. Let's see if I'm wrong or if I'm right. These two here are new oil, and this is 3 times with just 10 minutes of idling, with a cold cycle in between each one. This one is a brand new oil sample, So these two should be the exact same. Use the same oil. And this one, in fact, it's still warm. We just drained it out of the truck. This one is 10 minutes of driving and a cold cycle between those. What I'm going to tell you is this one is going to have a lot more fuel in the oil than this one. Fuel in the oil causes damage. We're going to ship these out overnight for testing to a lab, and then I'll have the results. I'm so excited. I need some bubble wrap. Listen, so we wrapped up those mason jars. We sent them back east, and my goodness, this doesn't happen all the time, but we actually got hand-delivered.
This guy.
You know, you pay extra for this service.
We get expedited processing, so if we fly the results, and you sent me a mason jar, I hand you back paper. We're going old school on this one.
So can you explain to me, and you've got it, I see you've got it here, sample 1, sample 2 and 3. Yep. You want to explain to me about, okay, the question was, what is better for the engine on a cold start?
Right.
To let it, just start it up, let it idle 20, 30 seconds, get in it and drive it easily, or just let it idle for 10 minutes before you drive it. What is going to cause less damage to the engine, and can we prove that scientifically?
Right, so what you did was you took samples of the fresh oil before it being ran, and then after that idle cycle, then you took another sample, you did an oil change, get that oil out.
Yep.
So we're beginning with the same fresh again, and then the drive cycle. And what we see from those results is that there was 42% less fuel in the oil when you drove it versus idling it.
Now wait a minute, that's almost impossible, and we're going to get to the science of that, because if I'm driving it, I'm actually more fuel into it.
Right.
But you're saying I have 42% less fuel in it if I drive it instead of just letting it idle.
Absolutely.
Okay, then explain to me how that could work.
Well, fortunately, I'm also a piston ring guy.
He is the piston ring guy.
So rings have a gap. And if you think about it, when an engine's cold, all the clearances are wider because most parts grow as they heat up.
Yeah.
So in a diesel engine, your clearances are wider. So that door is open, wider if you would, for the fuel and the moisture from combustion to get into the crankcase when it's cold.
And on top of that, let's talk about cold. You've also got fuel that's not being atomized because it's so cold, and it's hitting that cold cylinder wall.
Right.
And instead of being a mist or a fog like you'd love it to be, it's basically droplets.
And it's not turning into a vapor, so it's not burning, which is what we see here. So, I mean, you saw the data from idling it versus driving it, what the temperature was.
Oh yeah, it's so much quicker. As I recall, driving it, I think we got as much heat in it after 10 minutes of idling. We did it within like 2 to 3 minutes of driving it.
Okay, and these results back that up.
Yeah.
Because as that engine temperature goes up, those clearances close up. Basically, you're closing the door to allow the fuel dilution to get in the crankcase. So even though you're putting more fuel through the engine,
right,
because you're giving it more throttle and more engine cycles,
right,
counterintuitively, but you're closing that door to not let that combustion byproducts and fuel get into the oil. So you're getting cleaner oil by doing that. And we know that this is the case because the viscosity dropped less driving it versus idling it.
And the viscosity, because we basically just poured fuel into the oil,
right,
which is an enemy to the oil.
Right.
That's what you tell us.
Yeah, fuel is the enemy of your oil, and your piston rings are your oil's best friend.
Right.
But your piston rings need that engine temperature to close that door. So yeah, you did an oil test, piston ring test, all at the same time. Thank you.
When I did this in Utah, and the tests were between 15 to 30 degrees outside temperature.
Yeah, cold.
And it's cold, but it's not as cold as a lot of people that are stitch these videos, and we've looked at some of them, where they're like in the Great White North or up in wherever they're at, and it's like 20 or 30 below. With your understanding, would these results be even worse with the idling? Do you feel like we'd be getting even more fuel in it in a colder situation?
Yes. Yeah, the
Okay.
colder it is, the more
that
fuel
door is open.
Yeah, just leaving the door open longer.
Gotcha. One thing I didn't talk about, and and I want to bring it up now, it's all about getting heat into that oil as quickly as we can. Now there are some things like block heaters.
Yes.
Oil pan heaters.
Right.
In fact, you've got a fuel heater element there. Fast makes this.
Yep.
And you can screw that in, and that'll help heat up your fuel. Now, why would heating up our fuel be a good thing? Normally racers want the coldest fuel they can get. Is that true?
Well, state change, from a liquid to a vapor,
Right.
happens because of temperature. So if my fuel is hotter, it's going to be easier for it to turn into a vapor.
So I'm wrong. You want your fuel, you want your air to be as cold as possible because the density of the air.
Right.
But you want your fuel.
To be hotter.
Aha. See, Dave's not right on everything.
Well, especially with the diesel, because the fuel is going directly into the combustion chamber, and it's the unvaporized fuel that creates soot.
And that's the cold fuel. Right. Instead of being the vapor like that fog, it's actually drops.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into a lot more depth in this. We're going to sit over here, booyah, and do a podcast here. I'm so excited about that. And we're going to go into a little more depth about it.
So what we were able to see between that, I call it a 0 hour sample. Your sample from the engine being changed to fresh oil to the engine being run, there was about a 40% difference in the amount of fuel in the oil. So by driving the car, not idling it, you had 40% less fuel in the oil.
40%.
Actually, slightly over 40, it's 42%.
So
less.
So let me emphasize 42%.
And that less fuel in the oil driving it versus idling it.
So we're looking at the baseline sample. That's the fresh oil, 0 hour. That's in the engine. And that's the viscosity, the fuel dilution, none, obviously, right? Then everything else. Then this is after the 3 idle cycles. We see the viscosity dropped from 14.9 to 13.8, and we see that the fuel dilution went from 0 to 0.77%. Change the oil, so put fresh oil, same oil, back in there again, back to our 0 hour sample. Our viscosity is right back to where it's supposed to be, no fuel dilution. Then here's the 3 drive cycles, less viscosity loss, less fuel dilution.
And again, I think, we were talking about this. We're about best practice.
Yes.
There's
a lot of things you can do, and you can get away with it. But it's kind of like being a student. The person that got a C in school got a degree.
Right.
Well, so did the valedictorian.
Right.
But there's a big difference between the valedictorian and the C student.
Yeah.
Like, especially if they're a doctor. If I'm having open heart surgery, I want the valedictorian, not the C student.
Yeah, it's the same. I think about, you can go to a fast food restaurant and survive on that food for a very long time, but chances are you're going to kick over a lot quicker than the guy that's eating, wholesome stuff.
Absolutely.
And not smoking and drinking and, carrying on like a fool.
Right, yeah. So the whole point we're trying to make is
what's the best options?
Giving you best practices, and then you can decide if it works for you.
We're going to have this podcast out and some more info on this. And again, it's science, not
speculation.
Very good, man.